The fluorescent strip above the tunnel flickered once, then held. 22:41. 2 nights before we were supposed to go to war at home against Manchester City. I'd walked that same concrete corridor 1,000 times, boots clipping the same worn tiles, but tonight the sound felt different. Hollow. Like the place had already been emptied out. 3 of them were standing by the kit room door. Marcus Hale, our captain, arms folded across that broad chest. Next to him, Jamal Reeves, the midfield general who never missed a tackle, and tucked slightly behind, young but already ice-cold, Leon Driscoll, the winger who could beat a fullback with a look. They weren't talking. Just 3 silhouettes under the weak light, heads bent toward a phone screen that went dark the second I stepped closer. I slowed. Lads. Marcus lifted his chin half an inch. No smile, no gaffer, just that flat stare he usually saved for opposition strikers. Jamal gave the tiniest nod, the kind you give a stranger in a lift. Leon didn't even blink. The phone disappeared into his pocket with a soft click that seemed louder than it should have been. I kept walking, past the laundry smell of fresh kits, past the distant hum of the groundsman's mower outside. My assistant, Pete, was waiting at the medical room with the usual tablet and the injury update. He looked like he'd swallowed something sour. "Everything all right?" I asked, voice low. Pete hesitated. "Captain wants a word after training tomorrow. Just him. Said it's private." Private. In a dressing room where nothing ever stayed private. I nodded like it was nothing, but the skin on the back of my neck was already tight. 22 years in this game, and you learn to read silences the way other men read body language. This one had weight. Next morning, the training pitch was bathed in that weak February sun, the kind that never quite warms the bones. I blew the whistle for the usual shape work, expecting the same snarling intensity we'd built all season. Instead, the session felt polite. Passes crisp but safe. Tackles half-hearted. Marcus barked the odd instruction, but it was directed at the younger lads, not at me. Every time I shouted a correction, the group responded a beat too late, like they were hearing it through water. At one point, Jamal miscontrolled a simple ball. I stopped the drill. "Wake up, Reevy. That's Sunday League." He looked straight at me, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and said, "Sorry, Gaffer," in a tone that suggested he wasn't sorry at all. Then he jogged back into position without another word. The rest of them avoided my eyes. By the time we finished, the drizzle had started. I stood on the touchline watching them file inside, shoulders hunched, steam rising off their backs. Leon was last. He paused at the tunnel mouth, glanced back across the pitch at me, and for a second I thought he might say something. Instead, he just pulled his hood up and disappeared. In my office, I poured a coffee that tasted of nothing. The board above my desk was still covered in the city tactical notes we'd spent 3 days perfecting. I stared at the arrows, the pressing triggers, the set-piece routines. Everything looked correct on paper. On grass, it had felt like trying to push a rope. Pete knocked and came in without waiting. He shut the door behind him. "They're meeting again tonight," he said quietly. "The 3 of them. I saw Marcus pull Leon and Jamal into the canteen after showers. Close the door." I rubbed my eyes. And nothing. They just sat there. No raised voices, no phones out, just sitting. I laughed, but it came out wrong. "Jesus, Pete, you're making it sound like a bloody seance." He didn't laugh back. "Gaffer, you've been here 8 years. Longest we've had in a decade. The lads respect you. But respect and fear are different things. And right now, I'm not sure which one's winning." I waved him out. Sat alone with the hum of the fridge and the distant clang of weights from the gym. Outside, rain tapped the window like impatient fingers. 22:47, that same night I was still at the training ground, reviewing video on the big screen in the analysis room. The door opened behind me. No knock. Marcus stepped in, tracksuit half-zipped, hair still damp. Jamal and Leon followed. They arranged themselves in a loose semicircle by the whiteboard. No one sat. "Something you want to say, lads?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Marcus looked at the frozen frame on the screen. Our last defeat. The one where we dropped 2 points at home to Wolves. He tapped the pause button himself, freezing it on Leon missing a simple cutback. "We're not here to moan, Gaffer," he said, calm, measured, like he'd rehearsed it. "We just think maybe it's time we had a bit more say in how we go about things." Jamal nodded once. Leon stared at the carpet. I leaned back in the chair. "More say, right. And what exactly does that look like?" Marcus smiled, small and thin. "We'll let you know." They left without another word. The door clicked shut behind them with the same soft finality as that phone screen earlier. I sat there long after the lights outside had gone off, watching the rain streak down the glass. Somewhere in the building a locker slammed. Then silence again. Thick, deliberate silence. The kind that comes right before everything changes. The next 48 hours felt like walking through fog with the lights off. Friday morning, 07:12. I was first in the canteen as usual, black coffee steaming in front of me, iPad open on the city preview. The kitchen staff were still clattering pans. Then the players started drifting in. Marcus came through the door, earbuds in, and walked straight past my table without the usual, "Morning, Gaffer!" Not a glance. Jamal followed, gave me a nod so brief it could have been a twitch. Leon actually stopped, looked like he might speak, then thought better of it and took his protein shake to the far corner with the others. 3 senior players. 3 empty chairs at my usual table. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself again when I caught them in the gym later, heads together by the squat rack while one of the younger lads filmed something on his phone. They shut the camera off the second I walked past. By lunch, the drizzle had turned to proper rain, hammering the glass roof of the training center. I called the shape session anyway. Needed to see hunger. Instead, I got mechanics. Precise, professional, soulless. "Press higher!" I shouted across the pitch. They pressed higher. Exactly 2 meters higher. No more, no less. Like they'd agreed the number in the WhatsApp group I wasn't in. At 14:37, I pulled Leon aside after he'd skinned our left back for the 3rd time in a row. The kid was dripping, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You've been quiet," I said. He wiped his face with the hem of his training top. "Just focused, Gaffer." "On what exactly?" A pause. Rain dripped from his hair onto the grass between us. "Winning." He jogged off before I could answer. I stood there with the wind cutting through my coat, watching the rest of them go through the rondo like it was a funeral march. That night, the leaks started. First, it was a story on The Athletic. Sources close to the squad suggest growing frustration with conservative tactics. No names, of course. Just enough to make the fans start muttering. Then a picture appeared on a fan account. Blurry, taken from the car park, of Marcus, Jamal, and Leon climbing into the same black Range Rover after training. Caption: Leadership meeting? I rang the chairman at 21:50. He sounded like he was in the car himself, radio low in the background. "Relax, David," he said, using my first name like we were old mates and not employer-employee. "Players talk. Always have. You're reading too much into it." "Am I?" I asked. "Because the 3 of them have barely said 2 words to me since Wednesday." A chuckle down the line. "They're pros. Big game Sunday. They'll be fine." He hung up. I sat in the dark of my office, the only light coming from the pitch floodlights leaking through the blinds. The silence pressed in again, heavier now. Saturday, 10:23. Final prep session before the city match. I'd changed the shape overnight. More width, higher line. Exactly what the lads had been whispering for weeks. I wanted to show them I was listening. Marcus jogged over during a water break. For the first time in days, he looked me properly in the eye. "New plan, Gaffer? Thought you'd appreciate it." He gave that thin smile again. Appreciate the thought. Then he turned and shouted something to Jamal across the pitch. They both laughed. Not at the joke I couldn't hear. At something else. By the time we boarded the coach for the stadium the next day, the paranoia had teeth. Every conversation that stopped when I walked in. Every text that got deleted the second I glanced at a screen. Every time one of them looked away when I tried to catch their eye in the tunnel. 22:09. night before the match. I was doing my usual walk of the empty pitch when I saw it. A small huddle under the away end. 3 figures, one of them holding a phone up to the floodlight like they were checking signal, or recording something. I didn't go over. Just stood in the center circle, boots sinking into the wet grass, and watched them melt back into the shadows. Back in the dressing room, I sat on the manager's bench, the one with my name still stitched into the leather. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Somewhere down the corridor, a locker slammed again, then another, then nothing. I realized I was holding my breath. They were coming for me. Not with shouts or punches or the usual dressing room bollocking. They were doing it with quiet competence, with silences sharp enough to cut. With loyalty that looked perfect from the outside and rotten from 3 feet away. And the worst part? I still couldn't prove a single thing. Sunday morning arrived under a sky the color of wet slate. 8:57, and the dressing room already smelled of deep heat and nervous energy. I stood at the tactics board, marker in hand, running through the final set pieces one last time. The players trickled in, wearing the same blank expressions they'd perfected all week. Marcus took his usual seat at the front, legs stretched out, scrolling through his phone like the match was just another Tuesday kickabout. Jamal sat beside him, arms folded. Leon, headphones on, eyes closed in the corner. No one asked questions. No one joked about the referee. The silence had weight now, like the air before a storm that refuses to break. I clapped my hands. Right, lads, we've worked on this. High press, quick transitions. Let's shove it down their throats. A few murmurs. Marcus gave a single nod. That was it. Kickoff was 1400. By 1342, the tunnel was its usual cauldron of noise. Boots on concrete, shouts echoing off the walls, the distant roar bleeding in from the stands. I positioned myself at the front, as always, arms crossed, trying to catch eyes. Jamal walked past without looking. Leon brushed my shoulder and kept moving. Marcus stopped for half a second, looked straight ahead into the bright rectangle of the pitch, and said under his breath, "Let's see how it goes." Then they were gone, jogging out into the wall of sound. The game itself was a slow-motion car crash dressed up as football. We started brightly enough, but every time we won the ball, the 3 of them slowed everything down. Marcus dropped deeper than we'd planned, dictating tempo like a conductor who'd decided the orchestra didn't need the score. Jamal ignored 2 clear overlaps. Leon, when he finally got the ball on the left, cut inside and shot straight at the keeper instead of sliding it across the 6-yard box where our striker was screaming for it. Halftime, 0-0. The dressing room door slammed shut behind me. I didn't shout. I never do. Instead, I walked the length of the room, voice low. Leon, what the fuck was that decision? He looked at the floor. Thought I could take the shot, Gaffer. You thought wrong. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms folded. We're still in the game. No need to panic. The way he said it made my stomach turn. Calm, reasonable, like he was the one managing me. Second half was worse. City scored on 58 minutes after Jamal lost his man for 3 seconds, exactly long enough. Then another on 71 when our press evaporated the moment Marcus shouted, "Shape!" instead of pushing higher like we drilled. Final score, 2-1. The fans stayed to boo us off. In the tunnel afterwards, the silence was surgical. No slammed boots, no shouting, just the quiet clatter of kit bags and the occasional cough. I stood by the physio room watching them file past. Marcus paused again, this time close enough for me to smell the grass on him. Tough one, Gaffer, he said. Flat, no emotion. Then he was gone. That night, 23-18, I was still at the stadium, replaying the match on the big screen in the analysis suite. Pete had left hours ago. The only sound was the low hum of the server and my own breathing. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open the message. It was a screenshot. A group chat. 3 participants. MH, JR, LD. The conversation was short. MH. Board meeting Tuesday. We feed them the line about tactics and trust. Keep it clean. JR. Already got the journo primed. He owes me. LD. Just don't mention the bonus clause. Below it, another message, time-stamped 1947 that evening. He's finished. We just need to let him hang himself. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My thumb hovered over the forward button, then stopped. Who would I send it to? The chairman who'd already dismissed me? The press who'd twist it into squad mutiny? I saved the screenshot instead, heart hammering against my ribs. Monday passed in a blur of meetings and forced smiles. By Tuesday morning, the first proper leak had landed. Not a tabloid splash, something quieter. A well-placed paragraph in the Guardian's football bulletin. Senior sources at the club have expressed concerns over the manager's increasingly isolated decision-making. No names, just enough smoke. I walked into the training ground at 7:40 to find the three of them already in the gym, laughing about something on Leon's phone. The second I entered, the laughter died like a switched-off radio. Marcus gave me the nod again. Polite, professional, deadly. At 11:22, the chairman's secretary rang. Boardroom at 1400. Just a quick catch-up, she said. Her voice was too bright. I already knew what it was. In the boardroom, the curtains were drawn against the gray afternoon light. The chairman sat at the head, two non-execs either side, all of them in suits that cost more than most players' boots. Marcus, Jamal, and Leon were already there, not in tracksuits, but smart casual, like they belonged at the table. The chairman cleared his throat. David, we've had some feedback from the playing group. They feel the methods are perhaps a little dated. They've come to us with some constructive suggestions. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice smooth as pitch. We're not here to cause trouble, Gaffer. We just want what's best for the club. Jamal and Leon nodded in perfect sync. I looked at each of them. The same faces I'd fought beside for years. The same men I'd backed through bad runs and contract rows. Now they sat there like gentle executioners. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was full of messages, of screenshots, of quiet phone calls I'd never heard, of a coup that had been planned in changing room corners and car park huddles while I was still trying to read the room. And for the first time, I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The boardroom air was thick with the scent of polished wood and expensive coffee. 1407. I sat at the far end of the long table like a defendant waiting for sentence. The chairman shuffled papers he didn't need to read. Marcus, Jamal, and Leon sat together on the right side, three dark suits against the pale winter light leaking through the blinds. They looked like they'd rehearsed the seating plan. David, the chairman began, voice smooth as a club statement, the lads have expressed some concerns. Nothing personal, of course, just alignment. Marcus leaned in, elbows on the table, fingertips pressed together like a politician. We love what you've built here, Gaffer. The culture, the standards. But we feel the game's moved on. We need to be braver, more progressive. He said it with such quiet sincerity that even I almost nodded. Jamal chimed in, calm and measured. We're not asking for your head, just a fresh direction. We've spoken to the younger lads. They're behind us. Leon stayed silent, but his eyes flicked to mine for half a second, long enough to see the calculation behind the loyalty mask. I kept my face still. And this direction, it wouldn't happen to include that top 6 bonus clause in your contracts, would it? A flicker. Marcus recovered instantly. That's got nothing to do with it. The chairman cleared his throat again. We're not here to point fingers. We're proposing a player-led initiative. The 3 of you will sit on a new leadership committee. Input on tactics, training load, even recruitment conversations. Modern football, David. Collaboration. I laughed once, short and bitter. The sound died against the heavy curtains. By 15:30 it was done. No sacking. Not yet. Just a mutual review period. Code for slow execution. I walked out of the boardroom with the 3 of them behind me, their footsteps perfectly in sync. In the corridor, Marcus touched my shoulder, the first physical contact in days. Appreciate you hearing us out, Gaffer. His voice carried down the hallway like a recording.
That evening, the club website dropped the press release. Strengthening squad unity ahead of crucial run-in. My name was mentioned once, buried in paragraph 4. Marcus was quoted. We're all pulling in the same direction. The quotes were already trending. Wednesday morning, 9:45. The training ground car park was full of cameras. Sky, BBC, even the local radio van. The press conference had been called at short notice. To address recent speculation, I sat at the top table in the media room, tie too tight, lights burning hot on my forehead. Marcus was beside me, not Pete, not the captain in the usual sense, but the new face of the club. The journalist from the Times went first. Marcus, there are reports of dressing room unrest. Care to comment? Marcus leaned into the mic, relaxed, almost smiling. Unrest? Nah. We've had honest conversations, that's all. The gaffer's been brilliant with us. We just want to help push things forward. He turned and gave me the smallest nod, eyes full of fake respect. The cameras loved it. I answered the next few questions on autopilot. Tactics, the upcoming trip to Liverpool, injury updates. Every word felt like it was being fed through a filter. Jamal and Leon weren't even in the room, but I could feel them watching from somewhere. Probably the canteen, phones out, group chat pinging. Then came the trap. A woman from The Athletic, notebook open. Gaffer, the players have apparently been meeting without you. Is that true? Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in, smooth as oil. We meet all the time, love. That's leadership. We're protecting the group. The gaffer knows that. He placed a hand briefly on my forearm under the table. The cameras couldn't see it. The gesture looked supportive. It felt like a handcuff. I smiled for the lenses. Everything's fine. The lie tasted like metal. By the time I got back to my office, the damage was done. Social media was already flooded with clips. Marcus, the calm statesman, me, the tired old man blinking under the lights. Comments poured in. Finally, someone speaking sense. Time for fresh blood. One account, anonymous, but the profile picture was a black Range Rover, posted a screenshot of our last defeat with the caption, "When the players have to carry the manager." I shut the laptop. Thursday's training was theater. The press were allowed in for the open 15 minutes. Marcus led the warm-up, voice loud and clear, calling instructions I'd written the night before. Every time he shouted, "Well done, lads!" the cameras clicked. I stood on the touchline like a spare part, arms folded, watching my own squad perform loyalty for the lenses. At 11:12, Leon nutmegged a young fullback, then jogged past me without a word. But as he went, he muttered something under his breath, just loud enough. Keep smiling, Gaffer. That night, 1:03, I was alone in the house. The replay of the press conference was still playing on mute on the TV. Marcus's face frozen mid-nod, looking every inch the future. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another unknown number. This time, it was a voice note. Leon's voice, low and calm. You still don't get it, do you? We're not against you. We're just moving on, quietly. No mess, no stories. That's how it works now. The message ended. I played it again, then deleted it. Because that was the genius of it. They weren't screaming for my head in public. They were smiling me out the door. Public loyalty, private knives, a coup wrapped in professionalism so tight it looked like progress. And the worst part? From the outside, it looked like I was the one losing my grip. I poured another whiskey and sat in the dark, listening to the clock tick toward whatever came next. The silence wasn't over. It was just getting louder. Friday night, 1958. Anfield was a wall of red noise, the kind that presses against your ribs and makes your teeth vibrate. We were in the away dressing room, the one with the low ceiling and the paint that always seemed damp. I stood at the tactics board for the last time, marker squeaking as I underlined the press triggers. Marcus sat front row, tie loosened, staring at his boots. Jamal was next to him, rolling his shoulders. Leon had his headphones on again,
eyes half closed like he was already on the pitch. "High line from minute one," I said. "We squeezed them in their half, no dropping deep." Marcus looked up. "Got it, Gaffer." The words were right. The tone was hollow.
The referee's knock came at 20:07. Boots started hitting the floor in that familiar rhythm, but tonight it felt choreographed, every step measured. In the tunnel, the Liverpool players were bouncing, shouting, slapping the "This is Anfield" sign. Our lot stood still. 3 of them in a loose line: Marcus, Jamal, Leon. Shoulders touching, but eyes forward. No fire, just quiet readiness. I tried to catch Marcus's eye. He didn't give it to me. Kickoff, 2015. For the first 12 minutes, we actually looked decent. The press worked, Leon won a corner, Jamal won 2 tackles that brought the away end to life. Then, on 13 minutes, the first quiet betrayal. Liverpool broke. Marcus had the chance to step up and squeeze the play like we drilled every day that week. Instead, he dropped half a yard. Just half a yard. Enough for their number 10 to slip the ball through. Jamal misread the runner. Leon jogged back instead of sprinting. Goal. 1-0. The Anfield roar swallowed everything. I was up on the touchline, screaming instructions. My voice disappeared into the noise. Marcus jogged past the dugout on the way to restart, close enough for me to see the sweat on his forehead. He didn't look at me. Halftime, 1-0 down. The dressing room was sauna hot. I tore into them, voice raw. "What the fuck was that shape? We trained this!" Silence. Not the shocked kind. The loaded kind. Marcus wiped his face with a towel, slow and deliberate. "We're trying, Gaffer. Pitch is heavy." Jamal nodded. Leon stared at the floor tiles like they held the answers. Second half, 45:02. I made changes at the break, pushed another midfielder forward, told them to take risks. For 10 minutes, it worked. We equalized on 52 minutes when Leon actually delivered a decent cross. 1-1. The away fans sang my name for 30 glorious seconds. Then the collapse. On 64 minutes, Liverpool went long. Marcus was the last man. He had 2 yards on their striker. Instead of winning the header clean, he mistimed it on purpose, just enough to glance it into the channel. Jamal was slow to cover. Leon stood watching. 2-1. I was screaming from the technical area, arms wide. Marcus jogged past again, this time close enough for me to hear him mutter under his breath. "Keep shouting, Gaffer. Looks good on camera." The 4th official's board went up. Triple substitution on 71 minutes. The 3 of them came off together. Marcus first, then Jamal, then Leon. As they walked past me, they didn't touch fists, didn't slap backs. Just 3 straight faces, eyes fixed on the tunnel. The substitute who replaced Marcus patted my arm. "Sorry, Gaffer." He sounded like he meant it. The others didn't even try. Final whistle, 3-1. The tunnel after the game was a different temperature, colder somehow. Liverpool players were laughing, slapping walls. Ours filed through in silence. I stood by the physio door watching them. Marcus stopped right in front of me, kit soaked, mud up to his knees. "Tough night," he said, voice flat. Eyes empty. "We'll talk on Monday." Then he walked on. Jamal and Leon followed like shadows. No eye contact, no apology, just the soft scrape of studs on concrete fading down the corridor. Back at the hotel, 23:47. I sat alone in my room with the replay on my laptop. Frame by frame, I watched it. The half-yard drop, the mistimed header, the jog instead of sprint. Every mistake was perfect, professional enough to look like bad luck, deliberate enough to feel like a signature. My phone lit up. Group chat, the official one. Marcus had posted a message at 23:51. "Gutted tonight, but we go again. Thanks for the support." It already had 40 hearts from the squad. I zoomed in on one freeze frame, 67:42. Marcus, just before the second goal, glancing toward the bench, toward me. The smallest curl at the corner of his mouth. They hadn't forgotten the plan. They'd remembered exactly what they wanted to do, and they'd done it on the biggest stage, under the brightest lights, while smiling for every camera in the country. The silence had found its voice, and it sounded like Anfield singing someone else's name. Monday morning, 8:41. The training ground felt like a different building. Same corridors, same fluorescent hum, but the air had changed. Thinner, sharper, like everyone was breathing through a straw. I walked straight to my office, door already ajar. Inside, the chairman was waiting behind my own desk. 2 board members flanked him, and across the room, on the leather sofa I'd sat on 1,000 times after wins, were Marcus, Jamal, and Leon. Suits again. No training kit, no sweat, just 3 calm faces under the weak strip light. "David," the chairman said, not standing. "Sit down. This won't take long." I stayed standing. The carpet felt too soft under my shoes. Marcus spoke first, voice low and reasonable, the same tone he used in press conferences. "We've reflected over the weekend, Gaffer. The Liverpool result, it showed us the gap. The squad's spoken. We need a different voice, someone who can take us to the next level." Jamal nodded once. "It's not personal. You've given everything." Leon didn't speak. He just looked at the trophy cabinet behind me, eyes tracing the silver like it already belonged to someone else. The chairman slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. "Mutual consent. 6 months' money. Strong reference. We announce it this afternoon. Clean. Dignified." I stared at the words until they blurred. My name typed in full at the top. Date already filled in. The silence in the room was so complete, I could hear the second hand on the wall clock ticking behind me. Marcus leaned forward slightly. "We've drafted a statement from the players. Supportive. Grateful. We'll all post it at the same time." I looked at him then. Really looked. The same man I'd once dragged off the pitch at 4-1 down against Arsenal, arm around his shoulder, telling him the fight wasn't over. Now he sat there offering me a polite exit like he was doing me a favor. "You planned this from the tunnel that night," I said quietly. Not a question. Marcus didn't blink. "We protected the group, Gaffer. That's what captains do." Jamal checked his watch. Leon's phone buzzed once in his pocket and he silenced it without looking. The chairman cleared his throat. "Best for everyone, David. The club moves forward. You get time to reset. Win-win." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed because there was nothing left to fight with. Not in that room. Not against 3 men who had already rewritten the script while I was still reading the old one. At 09:17, it was over. They stood up together like a single unit. Marcus extended his hand. I shook it. Dry. Firm. Final. "Appreciate everything, Gaffer," he said. The others echoed it, 3 voices blending into one polite knife. I walked out of my own office without looking back. The corridor was empty except for one young academy kid pushing a laundry trolley. He froze when he saw me, eyes wide. I tried to smile. It didn't work. By 11, the club statement was live. "After 8 successful years, David Hargrove and the club have parted by mutual consent." Marcus's tweet followed 30 seconds later. Picture of us shaking hands after a win last season. Caption: "Legend of the club. Wish you all the best, Gaffer. The boys are behind you." The replies flooded in. Heart emojis. Proper leader. Class act. I sat in my car in the car park, engine off, rain starting to freckle the windscreen. My phone kept vibrating. Agents, journalists, ex-players. I let it ring out. At 13:22, a final message arrived. Unknown number again. A single voice note from Leon this time, recorded in what sounded like the empty dressing room. "You did good things here. But good things have an end. No hard feelings." The recording ended with the soft click of a locker shutting. I deleted it, then sat there listening to the rain on the roof until the training ground lights started switching off one by one, even though it was still daylight. Someone was already changing the bulbs in my old office. I could see the flicker through the blinds. The coup was complete. Not a single shout, not one public scene. Just silence, precision, and the slow tightening of a net woven in group chats and car park corners. I started the engine and drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. Behind me, the floodlights stayed on for the new era. Bright, clean, and already forgetting the man who used to cast the longest shadow in that tunnel. Tuesday evening, 1852. The stadium was a hollow cathedral. Floodlights still on from the academy session that had finished hours ago, but the stands were empty, seats glistening under a thin drizzle. I'd driven back without really meaning to. One last time. The security guard at the players' entrance had let me through with a quiet nod, pity in his eyes that he tried to hide. Boots on concrete again. This time my own footsteps were the only sound echoing down the tunnel. No kit bags, no banter. Just the low buzz of the lights and the distant drip of water from a leaking gutter somewhere above. I pushed open the dressing room door. It swung without resistance. The room smelled of nothing now. No deep heat, no grass, no adrenaline. Just cold air and faint disinfectant. My nameplate had already been unscrewed from the manager's bench. A faint rectangular mark left on the leather where it used to sit. I sat down anyway. The same spot where I'd given 1,000 team talks. The clock on the wall read 1903. Fluorescent tube above me flickered once, exactly like it had that first night in the tunnel. I almost laughed. My phone was off. Had been since the statement dropped. No more messages, no more voice notes. Just silence. The same silence they'd weaponized against me, now wrapped around the entire building like a shroud. I stared at the empty pegs. Marcus's spot, Jamal's, Leon's. 3 hooks still with tiny bits of tape where their names had been. I could picture them standing here 3 nights ago, after Liverpool, quietly packing their bags while I was still shouting at the 4th official. No raised voices, no slammed lockers that night either. Just the soft rustle of kit being folded and the occasional cough. Efficient, professional, merciless. The realization came slow, like cold water rising up my chest. They hadn't hated me. That would have been easier. Hate burns loud. This was worse. This was indifference dressed as respect. They'd studied me for months, my routines, my tells, my stubborn faith in the old methods, and then dismantled it piece by piece without ever needing to raise their voices. A masterclass in quiet power. The kind the modern game rewards. I pulled the crumpled match sheet from Liverpool out of my coat pocket, folded it open on my knee. Their names underlined in my own handwriting. Captain. Vice. Key influence. The 3 pillars I'd built the dressing room around. Now the pillars had decided the temple needed a new roof. 1917. I stood up and walked out onto the pitch. The grass was heavy, waterlogged. My boots sank with every step until I reached the center circle. The stadium lights cast long shadows across the turf, my shadow stretching all the way to the tunnel mouth, thin and distorted. I turned slowly, taking it in. The away end, where the fans had sung my name for 30 seconds on Saturday. The dugout, where Marcus had muttered, "Keep shouting," as he walked past. The exact blade of grass where Leon had stood watching the second goal go in. Everything looked the same. Nothing was. The club would move on by Friday. New manager announced before the weekend. Probably some bright young tactician with a PowerPoint full of data and no history here. The 3 of them would be photographed shaking his hand, all smiles and forward-thinking quotes. The narrative already written. Tired old manager, progressive players, necessary change. And the silence? It would continue. Smoother now, polished, marketable. I crouched down, ran my fingers through the wet grass. Cold, real. For 8 years this pitch had been mine. Now it felt like borrowed land. A distant clang, the groundsman locking a gate somewhere behind the stand. Then quiet again. Absolute.
That was when it hit me, fully. Not anger, not even sadness, just a clear, cold understanding. They hadn't let dull me with a rebellion. They'd simply stopped needing me.
In the quiet corners, in the group chats, in the car parks after dark, they'd built their own power base so efficiently that when the moment came, I was already a ghost in my own story. I stood up, brushed the wet from my hands, walked back toward the tunnel without looking at the stands. At the mouth, I paused, looked back once across the empty pitch. The floodlights hummed overhead. My shadow was already fading as I stepped into the darker corridor. Behind me, the stadium lights began to switch off in sequence, row by row, block by block, until only the tunnel light remained, flickering once, then steady. I didn't turn it off. Let the new era walk into it. The weeks that followed felt like watching your own funeral from the back pew. I stayed in the city at first, couldn't face packing the house, couldn't face the motorway north. Instead, I drove past the training ground most mornings, windows up, radio off, just to see the new floodlights they'd switched on for the new manager. Brighter, whiter, the kind that don't flicker. Marcus was the face of everything now. Captain's armband still on his sleeve, but the interviews had changed. He spoke about culture reset, player empowerment, modern leadership. Every clip ended with the same thin smile I'd seen in the boardroom. Jamal and Leon flanked him in the background of every shot. Silent support, perfect choreography. The club account posted a video of the three of them doing a recovery session together, laughing, no manager in sight. Views hit 2 million in a day. The fans moved on faster than I expected. One banner outside the stadium on the Saturday after I left. Thanks, David. New chapter. By the next home game, it was gone, replaced by one for the new man. Life at the top moves at Premier League speed. I watched the first match from a hotel bar in town, pint untouched. We won 3-0. Marcus scored the third, slid on his knees in front of the cop, arms wide. The stadium roared his name. Jamal and Leon were first to pile on. I switched the TV off when the commentator said, "You can see what this group has been crying out for." The silence had won. Cleanly. Beautifully. 3 months later, I was back up north, in a smaller house with a smaller garden. The severance money sat in the bank doing nothing useful. Agents called, championship clubs, foreign leagues. I let most of them go to voicemail. One night, 0214, I opened the old match folder on my laptop and scrolled through 8 years of photos. Me and Marcus after the FA Cup semi, Jamal lifting me on his shoulders the night we stayed up, Leon, 19 years old, crying in the dressing room after his first goal. I closed it. Didn't cry. Just sat there in the dark until the birds started. The real scar wasn't the sacking. It was the realization that I'd never seen it coming. Not properly. I'd built the culture, the standards, the trust, then watched 3 of my own creations use every lesson I taught them to remove me without a single raised voice. No leaks to the papers from my side, no dressing room bust-up for the cameras, just quiet competence, the modern way. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. The soft click of a phone locking, boots on concrete, the exact pitch of that fluorescent flicker, the way 3 men could stand in a corridor and say nothing, yet say everything. Last week the club played in the Europa League. I watched the highlights. Marcus lifted the captain on his shoulders after the winner. Same celebration they used to do for me. The new manager stood on the touchline, clapping, surrounded by the same staff I'd hired. Everything looked seamless, professional, forward-thinking. I turned the sound down and just watched the pictures. The tunnel, the dressing room door, the center circle where I'd stood alone under the lights. The silence they left behind wasn't empty. It had shape. It had weight. It wore a club suit and gave calm interviews and posted grateful tweets. It smiled for the cameras and collected the bonus clause and moved the club on without missing a beat. And somewhere, in a quiet house up north, an old manager sat with a cold cup of tea, listening to the distant roar of a new era he helped build, but no longer belonged to. The fluorescent light in my kitchen flickered. Once. Then held.